everybody. Welcome back to Magickal Journey Podcast. I am your host, Daniel Ian Cahoon. And as you notice, I'm still using the old countdown and intro for right now, but that will be going away soon. We have began the journey to the new, brand new. Yeah. So before we get started tonight, first of all, guys, pay attention to the screen for a moment. I want you to check out my friends at Mystical Mountain Creations, who, by the way, this lovely cup came from them. These guys, Jenny and her husband Mike, are working on getting together funding for those people who were affected by Helena and last year. They're in Asheville, and as you know all too well, these people, a lot of them lost everything. So part of the proceeds, I believe all of the proceeds are part, Jenny, are going to those people over there in Asheville and other areas that lost everything during that storm. Also, I want you guys to be aware of the fact that we now have officially launched magicaljourneypodcast.com, where you can find all things Magickal Journey on the website, and you can also pick up some magical merch, which I just got situated today. So there's some new offerings on the store. Yeah, too much nap time today or something. There's some new offerings in the store. There's some really good links going on there for you guys to check out, and you can find all of the podcast audio and visual on that website as well. So please go over and check it out. And that's pretty much all I'm going to give you guys for right now, because I have a guest on tonight that I really want to welcome to the stage. I want to hear a bit of info from, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the stage, Tommy Cullum. Hey, Tommy.
How are you, sir?
You know what? For some reason, my tongue and my brain are having a fight today. How are you?
It happens to me every day, man. I know that feeling. So I'm with you, brother. I'm with you. I'm excited to be here, man. Thank you very much.
I am excited for you to be here. I don't know if you guys hear interference or not. I'm hearing it in my.
I can't hear anything.
Okay. Now it's better. Okay. I don't know what's going on. It's like every once in a while, this room is a little difficult on things. So, Tommy, tell us a little bit about you and your podcast, and anything you want to promote out before we get started.
Yeah, man. So I'm Tommy from Let's Get Freaky podcast, a show that dives into all aspects of the paranormal: ghosts, cryptids, UFOs, a little bit of conspiracy as well. I normally have a guest on that comes on and shares their experiences and their thoughts on high strangeness. At the moment, it's normally 2 episodes a week, sometimes 3. And we're wherever you listen to podcasts, you can find us: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and we're also on YouTube now as well, so you can find us on YouTube as well. And yeah, man, I love talking paranormal, hearing people's experiences, and sharing my own experiences, and learning and trying to work out what's going on in this crazy world that we live in.
Right, because there is so very much. So let's step back for a moment and let's talk about some of the things that you have experienced.
There's been a few. There's been a few things. I've had quite a lot of paranormal experiences. I never used to see myself as someone that had a lot. I felt everyone experienced this stuff. You know, that's what I've always thought, that it's kind of normal, but it is to most people. I think most people do experience paranormal to some extent. Some people seem to be able to switch it off, and then others experience a lot of stuff. And for me, I think that's just, if you're open to this kind of thing, you're going to experience stuff. You know, I kind of say, I didn't make this saying, I don't think, but if you look into the paranormal, it looks back. I really do believe that. I really do believe that that happens. But my journey with the paranormal starts from day one, really. You know, since I was a little kid, I was always one of those weird kids, you know, that was always scared of the dark. You know, I still am scared of the dark, to be honest. But always felt like there was something there. Always got that feeling that I was being watched, you know, monsters in the dark. I was a terrible sleeper, and it just begun from a very young age. And I grew up in what I would say was a haunted house, you know, very strange activity. The whole family used to feel it. We didn't really talk about it when we was younger. And it wasn't really until we left the house that I remember my dad turning around and saying to all of us, "I'm glad we got out of there." You know, it was, yeah. But I mean, it wasn't always bad in the house. It wasn't always negative, but there was certainly times where it was negative. But your typical stuff, you know, things used to go missing. You used to hear people walking around when everyone was in bed at night and there was no one up, but you'd hear someone walking around. I always felt like there was something in my room. I always got that feeling since I can remember. But my first kind of big experience, which really stands out, which really sort of was the moment that I was like, you know, this stuff is real. I was around 10 years old. Me and my brother shared a room at the time, and we had bunk beds. Now, as I say, I was one of those kids that was always scared of the dark. So I would, since I can remember, I used to get up through the night, and if I woke up during the night, I was getting in bed with my mum and dad. You know, I was straight in bed with my mum and dad. I was one of those kids, and even up to like 10, I was still like that. I would wake up, I'd get scared, you know, and I'd get in bed with my mum and dad. And I guess at this time they'd had enough of this. You know, they were trying to stop me from doing this. And this particular night, I've woken up during the night, and all the lights were off in the house. Our room was fairly lit up because there was lights coming from the street lights outside, so they were coming in, and you could see the layout of the room. And I just remember I woke up and I've looked down in my bedroom, and in the corner of my room, me and my brother had a desk, and there was a man sitting there at the desk, a full-bodied apparition, entity, spirit, whatever it was, sitting there at my desk, and I was just terrified. You know, I've screamed for my mum, and I'm not thinking at this time. I wasn't thinking ghosts. You know, I was just thinking there's a man in my room. You know, there was a man just sitting there in my room, and he was kind of just sort of sitting there with his head in his fist, looking up in sort of my direction, but he didn't move. Like, he wasn't moving. His face didn't change, but I could see him very clearly. Like, I could see what he was wearing. He had like a brown suit on. He had like a little brown beard, like long brown hair. And I always say, whenever I tell this experience, that he looked like William Shakespeare. That was the kind of look that whenever I see a picture of William Shakespeare now, it takes me back to that. But I don't think it was William Shakespeare. I just think this, whatever I was seeing, seemed to be from that era, I would say. And my mum's come in the room because I'm shouting, and she can't see this guy, but I can still see him. He's not disappeared. He's not moved. He's still there, exactly how I could see him before. And my mum's gone up to the corner of my room because I'm pointing, saying, "There's a man, there's a man." And she's kind of gone up to where the man was. I don't know if she's gone through him or anything like that. I couldn't see, but she came back quite angry, my mum, and saying, "There's no one there. You need to calm down. You're staying in your bed." And whenever she'll hear this, she'll watch this, and she'll hear this, and she'll apologize to me. I say every time I talk about this, she rings me up and says, "I'm sorry," again. And I'm like, "You don't have to say sorry anymore, Mum. It's okay. It's okay." But so I went under my covers. My mum left the room, and I just remember I was crying, I was sweating, I was a mess, and I just kept looking at this dude, and he was still there. He was there all night. He didn't disappear. He didn't move. And I kept going back under the covers, kept looking. And then eventually, somehow, I fell asleep that night and woke up the next morning, looked straight away. He was gone. Never saw that man again. Had a lot of other weird stuff happen in the house. Saw other things, but never that particular entity, ghost, whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but it was real. You know, people say to me, "Oh, you could have been dreaming," or it wasn't, man. You know, I know it was real, and it was there, and it was solid, and very strange. But that was the moment that I was like, you know, I know her, basically. I would say that I know that this stuff's real.
Right. I would think after that, if you didn't know, something's wrong there.
Yeah.
Wow. So, what? Obviously, that had a long-lasting effect. I mean, that's kind of intense, actually, for an early experience. God.
I can still see it so clear. Like, it's like you can't forget something like that. Obviously, you know, something like that happens, it's just whenever we talked about ghosts or anything, that was just I've 100% seen an entity. You know,
Definitely so. Definitely. So, what is after you processed that and went through that experience? Was that what led you to kind of the journey that you found your way into podcasting to?
I would think so. I think so. I think that's probably where it stems from. Even before I had that experience, I think I did have other experiences, but not quite clear experience. That was like the first for me, definite, you know. But yeah, other things happened after that as well, and continue to happen to this day. But I do believe that it stems back from that night, really, because that was the sort of night that it became real. As I say, like this, I knew that what I was seeing there wasn't my imagination. You know, it wasn't a trick of the lights. It wasn't. It was so clear, a solid man. You know, and that was it. And it has probably led me on this journey that I'm on now.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Of course, it's obvious just by listening to you, if people don't know, that you live in a particular area of the world where the history kind of lends itself to the unexplained. Now, what I didn't know was what some of the stuff that you told me uh, about the area where you live at in particular uh, before we came on tonight. So, tie that in for us. Give us some perspective on your area, your part of the world.
So I'm from the UK, and the house where I grew up in. So I'm originally from Essex, which is right next to London, pretty much London as well. But now I live in Dorset, which is on the south coast, and it's about 2 hours from London, so it's not that far really. But it's quite different around here. It's a lot more countrified, a lot of old castles and stuff like that. And where I live right now, I live 40 minutes away from Stonehenge, which, as you know, is an area of a lot of high strangeness, crop circles, and all sorts of UFO sightings constantly happening in that area. I've also got Corfe Castle just down the road from me, which is 15 minutes drive from me, and it's about 1,000 years old, and it's a beautiful old castle. It's mainly ruins now, but the main structure is still there, and people visit it to this day. And it's meant to be one of the most haunted castles in the UK. As I said to you before, I know a lot of castles and pubs especially claim to be the most haunted, but I don't know how they measure it. I don't know. It's in the top 10 if you go and Google. But yeah, so there's a lot of everywhere's haunted basically. But I think everywhere is all around the world, to be honest. But there is a lot of there's a lot of old history here in the UK. It goes back to thousands and thousands of years, really, to the druids with Stonehenge and stuff like that. And the history gets kind of blurry, as you know, and we don't fully know all the answers. We don't know how Stonehenge was built. You know, officially, there's a lot we don't know. And what I found interesting, I had a while back, I had Matt Pike on the show, and he works at Stonehenge, and he's got a great knowledge of Stonehenge. He had a UFO sighting himself there, and he works there every day. Great guy, and he was telling me that underneath Stonehenge itself is pretty much untouched. They've not really done a lot of research. They've not really dug a lot up. They've dug certain parts up, but there's loads of land there that's not been touched. So there's probably a lot of secrets there, man. You kind of don't want them to dig it up because you don't want them to ruin anything, or you know. But there's probably more secrets under there, I would say, if that's the case. But yeah, man, it's very strange.
Yeah. It's the history is just, of course, that whole area. I mean, like when you get into, you know, the backdrop of what's now the UK, we know that, you know, when the Rome came in and did their thing, it was a very destructive time. It was a very intense time in history. There have been many upheavals, many different times throughout history where the land itself experienced some very troublesome moments.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You know, wars, invasions, all sorts of things took place there. So, of course, with that, you're going to have some pretty intense activity. Now, when we talk about like your experiences of it, do you actively do research and investigations over there?
I don't. I actually don't. It's something I would like to do. It's something I'm considering, like starting to go out and actually check out haunted places. I mean, I've been to a lot of places that are haunted, and you know, history-wise, loads of places I've been to, obviously, but not actually investigated. And it's something I would like to do. And I've started looking into the history more. And the more you look into the history of your area and where I used to live as well, I've started looking into the history there as well. There's so much I didn't know, man. And there's so many rabbit holes to go down. So, yeah, I do want to start exploring the local areas and the legends and stuff. And there's so many. And I know you get that everywhere. Everywhere's got legends and lore. But it's cool to dig and find this stuff out. And I do want to start getting out and investigating.
So Austin and I are going to come visit you.
Come, man. That'd be amazing. Yes, you can stay at mine, man.
There you go, Austin. We've got a place to crash.
100%. 100%.
I would love to go over there. So you guys had quite the party not too long ago over there in Stonehenge, because every year there's a celebration that takes place. There's several celebrations that take place at Stonehenge. But one in particular we just had is a really big experience every year. Give us a little bit of a rundown on that.
So that was the, what's it called? It's the start of the, I can't remember what it's called. That's terrible. But I know what you're talking about. The solstice. The solstice. That's it. That's the word I was looking for. I've never actually been to that event. But it's really cool because I know I really should. But they open it up because normally you're not allowed to actually touch the stones now. But this is the weird thing. So this is quite strange, right? So when I was a kid, when I was living in Essex, we used to go on holiday to Cornwall every year, every single year, every summer. And we would drive past Stonehenge every year, and it was like a big moment because we were like, it's Stonehenge, and we pull up, and I remember all of us getting out the car and walking up to the stones and touching them and being in the circle, and I remember it, 100%. My mum and dad do as well, and my brother. But now you can't do that. Like it's kind of blocked off. And I was talking to Matt, who I said was on the show, who works at Stonehenge, and he said you've never been able to just walk over to the stones. And I was like, but I remember doing it. And maybe it wasn't allowed, and we was just still doing it, which I'm sure you could get to the stones like illegally if you wanted to. But so maybe we was doing that, but there was no one there stopping us, and apparently there always was. He did say there was a time where, because there was always a security guard there, and there was a time where they like switched over. So there might have been a time where it was open, but I don't think so, man. I think I don't know why. I don't know what that's all about, but I definitely have memories as a kid going over to the stones and being inside them and touching them and stuff. And we used to do it every year because it was like a big thing to go past Stonehenge.
Oh, wow.
And now I live a little bit closer, so it's weird because I live so close to it, but I only go to it, every now and again. But it's right on my doorstep. It's 40 minutes from me now.
See, that's very interesting because I know from experience, it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. We never go to the places that the rest of the world wants to be at if we live too close to them.
Absolutely.
There are people I know in East Tennessee that have never been to this Great Smoky Mountain National Park.
No way.
And they literally live in towns around it. I'm like, how can you never have gone there?
That's insane.
But it's true. It's true. People will just avoid the places that, I got to tell you personally, I avoid some of those areas now because I work over that way some. It gets very congested. I get it.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting that you guys all have a recollection of going up to the circle, touching the stones. Everybody in your family has that same memory, but yet history bears witness to the fact that that wasn't possible.
Yeah.
And
It is weird because when I was telling Matt that I used to do it, he was like, "Well, yeah, it's never been open to freely just walk over and touch them." And I was like, "Okay." I remember doing that though, so I don't know what that was all about.
It would be interesting to see if there's anybody else out there that's had that experience. As a matter of fact, if you have had that experience of remembering being able to go up to the stones and touch them, leave us a link down below and let us know about that, because I want to know if other people have experienced that as well. It's very interesting because I wonder if maybe there is a time shift or a time glitch that allows certain people to do that at certain times or whatever. So you said this was a yearly event with you guys. Was there a specific time of year that this happened?
Yeah, it would have been August, so it was through the summer holidays. So when we was off school, till I was 12, we used to go to Cornwall every year for 2 weeks a year. Every year, like it was our family holiday that we used to do. So on the way there, we would stop off, see the stones. On the way back, we would stop off, see the stones, and it was just a park because we Cornwall from where we was. It was about a 6-hour drive, so it used to break up the journey as well. Sometimes we'd stop somewhere else overnight, like to cut the journey a little bit. So yeah, I've got those memories, man. So, but I mean, if you drive past the stones now, there's no fence up really stopping you. Like you probably could drive up. I don't encourage anyone to do this because you're probably breaking the law, and walk up to the stones pretty easily without paying. But when you officially go to Stonehenge, you park in a car park that's probably about a mile away or whatever it is, because you've got a lengthy walk to the stones. So you can't just walk from the road to the stones. But I think you used to be able to, or there was some strange time. I don't know. Yeah.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's the other thing that I think we want to make very clear to people. When you go into some of these areas, treat them with respect, guys. Like, the last time I went to the park here, to the Great Smoky Mountains, there was graffiti on rocks in the federal park. This is
Oh
federally owned
man,
property.
yeah.
Um, there's reasons why people are not allowed to touch things uh, now, because for one thing, the oils in our skin, can transfer onto the surface of these things to create a lot of issues for the stones, for a lot of the environment itself.
Hmm.
So be mindful when you go to these places and be respectful. Remember, you are not the only human being in the universe.
Hmm.
So enjoy it, respect it, love it.
Yeah, yeah. I get why you can't just go up to the stones now, because
Mhm,
you would for sure get, people. Some people just don't care, and they would like write their name on it and stuff, and
mhm.
tag it or whatever they call it. But yeah, that so I do get why they have to protect it. Obviously, it's such a special thing, and you're going to get some strange people going over there.
Ah, so have you heard about the burial grounds that supposedly has hundreds of giant bones underneath it?
Oh, I'm not sure. Where's that? Is that near Stonehenge? Because I know that there's a lot of mounds, and it's not just Stonehenge. There's other like rock formations around there as well that are very strange. And you've also got the giant. Have you seen that? There's like a naked giant on a hillside. I've forgotten what it's called. I should remember the name, but it's like they reckon it's over 2,000 years old. It might probably older than that, but it's like a caveman giant basically that they made whenever they made it a long time ago. I don't. I should have more information on it. So there's a lot more around there.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, definitely. Um, and I know there's several things I've seen online that's very curious, and I know that they've talked about about uh, having petrified dragons and all kinds of things in certain areas over there. It'd be very interesting. Um, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Austin is asking, wasn't Stonehenge gifted under the condition that it would be always free?
No, you have to pay. You have to pay. Last time I went to Stonehenge, me and the family, it cost us £50 to go and see it. Unfortunately, you have to pay. So, um, yeah, but we never used to. We never used to when I was younger. So maybe,
Wow.
maybe, maybe they've changed the regulation. I mean, they've definitely tightened up the security around there, 100%. You probably, I don't know how easy you'd be able to get over to it from the roadside now, but yeah.
Wow. Very interesting. Very interesting indeed. They during the
Oh, the
solstices
solstice.
free. Yeah. I would think I would think so, yeah. Um so let's back up again and let's talk about some of the things that you've experienced there in your area and in other areas because you've lived a
Mhm.
couple of places here.
Yeah.
What are some of the other experiences that you've had over time?
Yeah, there's been a few. So in that house where I saw the man, I also saw another strange entity. Well, I'd say I don't know what it was, but I was in my mum and dad's bedroom, and they had like mirrors in their room, and I was sort of in their. This was during the day, and I was in their room just being silly, playing around in front of their mirrors, and I saw a, a naked lady walk past me, and I've seen her, followed her into my mum and dad's bathroom that they had in their bedroom, and it was a naked blonde lady, again full bodied. It was like a solid form, and I just thought it's my mum because my mum was blonde and she would sometimes walk around the house naked. So it wasn't too strange to see a blonde naked lady. So I've started I said, Mum, started talking to what I thought was my mum, but I clearly saw her walk into the bathroom, and I followed her into the bathroom, talking to her. As I've got into the bathroom, there was no one in there. And I was like, I just remember being so confused, ran downstairs. My mum was in the kitchen, fully clothed. And I said, Mum, like, was you in the bathroom? I've just seen you walk past me naked in the bathroom. And she's like, no, it wasn't me. You didn't see me. And that was another time that I saw definitely something solid form, you know, because at that time I wasn't even scared, you know, it was during the day, it was light. I was just in my mum and dad's bedroom being silly, dancing, you know, I wasn't thinking anything paranormal, you know, there wasn't. So, and I saw that. So that was another time in that house that I saw something very strange. That was like a definite, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't until because I talk about this stuff with people and share my experiences, and someone said to me recently, that sounds like a doppelganger. And I was like, it does, you know, I never put that term to it, but it does sound like that, you know. I thought it was my mum, you know.
Wow.
And that's got some negative connotations with the doppelgangers, and I've actually had stuff in this house possibly connected with that as well.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, man.
So, have you ever experienced, and I think a lot of people over here are very curious about cryptids. So have you seen or experienced any cryptids over in your side of the pond?
I can't say I definitely have seen a cryptid, but I've had some weird stuff that possibly could relate, you know, and that's probably only because of what I do with the podcast, that I'm always thinking about this stuff and connecting the dots. But this is quite strange. So when I first moved to Dorset, where I am now, I've been in this house now for about 3.5 years. And when I first moved here, I wasn't working. I just left my job to move to Dorset. Hadn't started the podcast yet, but I was kind of thinking about it. And when we first moved to this house, we didn't know anything about the area. We didn't know anyone. You know, we completely moved to a new. All we knew is that we wanted to live in Bournemouth, Dorset, where we are, because we wanted to be by the beach and the forest and stuff. And so that was all we knew. And you know, after 2020, when we was locked up, we said as soon as we get free again, we're gonna move. And that's why we moved. And so when we first moved here, I used to hear. So I'd sit in the front room at night, and I've always been like a late night owl. So I always stay up. I've always been like that, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, and I would hear like a growling outside the window to the street. And I said, listen to us, to be like, oh, who's letting their dog out at 2 o'clock in the morning in the front and not in their backyard? You know, everyone's got a backyard. Why would you let your dog out in the front, in the road, basically? And so I just always thought it was a dog, but I used to hear it all the time, like a growling, like something big. And there was a Rottweiler across the road, so I just assumed it was that. So I've heard this growling one night, and I'm looking out my window trying to see. I'm expecting to see like a big dog. Nothing's there. I'm like, that's weird. That's quite strange. And then, you know, I'm still not thinking anything. I'm just thinking there must be a logical explanation. We've got a massive forest behind us, like Heathland forest, and that is like a big reason why we moved here as well, because we wanted to be by the forest and stuff. And I love going in the forest, man. I'd feel like a half an hour walk every day in the forest is something that I need to do. So that was another reason why we moved here as well. So it was again, before I started the podcast and stuff, I was taking my 2 daughters for a walk in the forest. It was just me and my 2 daughters, and it was getting late-ish, but it was still kind of light. And we got quite deep into the forest, and my eldest, Amy, who would have been 10 at the time, just started freaking out. Now, I know kids freak out in the forest when it's getting dark and stuff, so this is what I'm thinking in my mind. But she just started freaking out of nowhere and said, Daddy, I've just seen something. I've just seen a Bigfoot. And I'm like, calm down. Like, you're scaring yourself, basically. We need to get home. And I said, we're talking on the way back. I said, what do you see? And she said, like, I saw a Bigfoot, it had yellow eyes. And she's like describing a Bigfoot to me. Now I'm not really believing her. I know that I'm thinking in my mind, she's scaring herself. She's watched one of my documentaries that she shouldn't be watching, because I'm always watching. I try to keep the kids away from the spooky stuff, freaky stuff, but every now and again they're going to see stuff. So that's what I'm thinking. She's seen a documentary. We're in the forest. She's scaring herself. Didn't think too much else of it. So there was those two things that were kind of strange. And then I started working in the area, so I'm starting to meet people. And there's this young girl that I met in my new job, and she was telling me about like the local spooky stuff around here, because I was just starting Let's Get Freaky podcast. So that was like my main topic of conversation with people. Like, have you had any paranormal experiences? So she said, well, in our forest, there's a devil dog law. They call it the devil dog. And people see this thing. She said she'd had experiences with it. Her dad had experiences with it. And it's very much fits the description of like the dog man. But it seems to be more of a supernatural thing where people will hear it, see it, maybe see it, sense it, smell it, like the typical cryptid sightings that we get. And I was like, wow, that's amazing. So we've got a cryptid in our forest. And then I'm starting to think, okay, so I heard that growling. And then my daughter saw something that night, and I'm not saying it's definitely that, but possibly. The funny thing is, once I found out about the devil dog law in the forest, I never heard the growling outside again, and it was quite regular at the time, but that kind of stopped, which I found quite strange. And then we got ourselves a dog. So I've got a little Staffordshire Bull Terrier dog, lovely little dog. But he's crazy. Like he's not nasty, but he's not scared of anything or anyone. We've got wild bulls in the forest, and he'll play with them. He's not worried about anything. And we were going through the forest, me and the whole family, and we got to this certain spot, and he completely freaked out for seemingly no reason. Like he was backing up. He was like scared of whatever he could see or sense in front of him. So I've actually physically pick him up and walk him through the path where he's freaking out, put him back down. He was absolutely fine. I said to my wife, that is so strange. Like, why is he just freaked out like that? That is so out of character. And he's only ever done it twice. He's done it twice in that forest, once that time, and then he done it on another occasion with my wife where he just freaked out and she kind of had to move him past. He's only ever done that twice. But it was like he was seeing something or sensing something. Something was really scaring him. So I said, I'm going to go back and check out the area. I couldn't see anything there was no one else around, no other animals, no idea. So that was another thing. I'm like, maybe that's connected to the devil dog, maybe. And then another time it was me and my two daughters again, and they just got new bikes. So we were taking them down I took them down the forest on their new bikes, and there was this little route you can go down, which is like it's like probably a quarter of a mile, whatever it was. It's quite a long little road, but I can see them the whole way down, and they like to ride down it, go to the end and come back. So they were like, Daddy, can we go on this route? And I said, yeah, go. I'll be standing here watching. Right. They're riding down the path. They've got about halfway, and I saw in the distance a grey, what I thought at first, I thought it was a fox at first, but then I was like, no, it's too big to be a fox. But it wasn't bipedal, it was on all fours. And I was like, that's a big dog, and it was grey. And I'm thinking, okay, maybe an owner's going to come behind it. No one came, and my two daughters got halfway and saw whatever I saw as well, freaked out, turned round on their bikes and came back towards me. But my middle daughter, Ruby, fell over. So I ran down to her, picked her up. I looked up, and this dog, whatever it was gone. And I said to Ruby, what did you see? What happened? She went, I saw a wolf, Daddy. I saw a wolf. That was her words. And I was like, whoa, okay, let's get out of here. Again, I can't say it's definitely devil dog, but it just when you put all those things together, it's very strange. And as
Mhm.
I'm in that forest every day, so that there's not a lot. That's all that's happened in the 3.5 years that I've been here. But yeah, sometimes you get a weird vibe over there. But yeah, man. So I put that possibly cryptid, but I've never actually seen. I'd love to see a Bigfoot, man. That's like the dream. I know they say be careful what you wish for, but I would love to see something like that, because cryptids is it's a big reason what I enjoy talking about, and I love hearing like cryptid encounters and stuff. So yeah.
It's very interesting because, of course, where I'm at in Appalachia, there's you know, at one time on the land masses were all one big thing. It's pretty well situated where you can put all the pieces back together again and tell that what we call over here Appalachia was once part of the same chain of mountains and so forth that is connected over there with you guys.
Hmm.
So, of course, I tell people all the time there's a reason why when the Scottish and Irish came over, they kind of like gravitated to the mountains here,
Hmm.
and they began to feel at home, and they built you know what's now known as Appalachia, and there's a lot of history here rooted with that. And I say all that to say this: there's a lot of the mythology and lore and a lot of the things, the traditions of Appalachia, still to this day can be traced back to their original uh, kindred there with the Scottish and the Irish and those areas. And so it's very interesting when we've had several people talk about and even speculate over here. Oh, well, I wonder if over there they have the same experiences with the cryptids that we do. And unanimously, I want to say, well, of course they would. Why would they not? Because the land was once shared. So,
Hmm.
so in my mind, I still say that there's probably instances over there that can be compared to here.
Hmm.
Is the interpretation, the cultural views that may be somewhat different. Because our hillbillies over here, as we like to call ourselves sometimes, because people used to call us hillbillies all the time. Um, eh, our interpretation of things is very earthy, and we have I guess you could say a kind of a preconceived notion of how we describe and talk about these things, much like you guys over there have eons of history, and how you see things, how you view things is through a different lens. So some of the experiences that we have over here may very well be, when you talk about devil dogs, that's not a term we hear a lot here. They call them hellhounds, which is the same thing.
Hmm.
But it's very interesting, the experiences that you're talking about and how they seem to connect together, I guess is the
Yeah.
best way to put it.
That's what I've found. There's all these, like, everywhere in the world, people are experiencing these same things. Whether it's like little people, puckwudgies, brownies, pixies. Whatever you want to call them. Whatever these things are, that people are describing the same things everywhere around the world. It's just normally called something different. That's normally the only difference, really. People might describe it a little bit differently, but they all seem to be the same, man.
Oh wow, yeah. Um, when we, I really want to touch on this because I think it's one of those things that again is not very understood over here. The backdrop of the lore and so forth uh, in some areas there, traces back to the Druids and some other, I'm sure there's things that we can't wrap our heads around. Um, they're remnants of the Pecks and so forth that you guys know exist that we may not even be aware of that lead us to some of the modern day lore and so forth. Give us a little bit of I guess a little bit of insight from your perspective on how those past cultures and those past civilizations, those past things come into play in modern day lore there.
Well, we still have druids now. There are still people that, still, go by the druid way, and still, they still exist. They're still around. The UK history is so wild, really. When you look at it, you had old England. It was nearly taken over so many times. The Vikings nearly took over England. Basically, it was only Wessex that fought back and took England back. It would have been completely different had they taken the whole of England. It would have been a completely different story, I'm sure. But the culture is kind of intertwined with Scandinavian culture as well, and it there seems to be a mixing pot here in the UK. But yeah, there's still, as you say, there's so much history, man. There's still but there's still a lot we don't know as well. There's still so much mystery to it all as well. We don't really know. We don't really have the answers to how it started here. That is, like a lot of history, to be honest. We've seen how history can be manipulated and changed. Even in a short space of time. We see it even in our mainstream media now today, how they can seem to sort of change history in like a couple of weeks now. So you can imagine 100 years, 1,000 years ago, how much it's probably wrong, our history. I know a lot of people don't like to hear that, but I feel like that is the case.
Very much so. Sometimes I feel like I know the history that I was taught is very different from what they teach in most public schools and so forth. So yeah, we have to question. History is really given to us through the lens of the person who's telling it.
Absolutely, and normally the winner of the battle.
Oh, there's that too. There's that too.
But you're right though. The people put bias on things and change we've seen that. We see that happening in today's world. So it's probably been going on forever.
Right. One of my favorite things to tell people about, if you really want to get an idea of how history is skewed according to perspective, there's the famous incident between the Clan Cahoon and the McGregors, where the McGregors were actually kicked out of Scotland, were forced to abandon their name in some cases, and many of them decided to go by Gregor instead of McGregor because
Interesting.
there was a big battle where the McGregors killed 100 of the men from the Cones, and the women, the wives of these 100 men, went before the king with their husbands' clothing from the battle and laid it before the king and asked him, said, "What are you going to do to avenge our losses?" And the response was to kick out the McGregors. Now, they were actually banished at one point. Now, if you ask either side, the history of that's going to be horribly skewed.
Mhm.
And that's one of the things that I tell people all the time about when we get a history of England. I mean, today's a good example of over here, everybody's celebrating 4th of July.
Yeah, happy 4th of July, by the way.
Yeah. I jokingly still call it Treason Day. When you come over here and you get the interpretation of history, I mean, English history becomes very different from the American perspective, and it's the same thing over there. I mean, our history becomes very different. It's all perspective. This is why I say it is really about who's telling the story as to whether history is one way or the other. Anyway, one of my English professors, he was actually the head of the history department there at the university here that I went to. He was from England, and when he did the World Survey of History, and I took that class, one of the things that I found interesting was when he talked about Islam or the rise of Judaism or whatever, he called it the cult of. And of course, there were people who took offense to that over here. And I asked him one day in class, would you please explain to me what you mean by the cult of when you say this? And he very eloquently explained his perspective on the term cult. And it made sense to them after that. But there were some people that were just like, oh, wait a minute, Judaism's not a cult. Like, at one time it was. So much like that.
It's interesting you say about the name. So my name, Cullum, I've sort of looked back at my history, and we were actually Cullum at first, and it must have been similar where there was a battle and some were dispersed and became Cullum. They took away the Muck, so I could have been Muck, but we broke off and changed it to Cullum.
Interesting.
Yeah,
very interesting. Okay. So one of the things I'm very curious about, because we always think about the legends and lore of England. We talk about the wee folk and so forth like that. I'm so tired of people's interpretation of St. Patrick's Day over here, and everything is about the wee folk. But let's talk for a minute about how some of those creatures of lore, I mean, for instance, I'm always curious because, of course, obviously my last name is Cahoon. My family origin is from Scotland. It's one of the few places that has a mythical creature as the animal of choice for their country. It's hard to say that and not laugh. But the reality is there's some of the mythical creatures, some of the lore that is very rich over there and has some very key elements. Tell us a little bit about the wee people and the concept of giants over there. Two different types of creatures that are talked about frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too sure. I mean, the wee people, that people call them different names, even in the UK. Like, you'll hear some people call them pixies, brownies. They're describing the same sort of things, but different towns, I guess, going back hundreds of years, called these things something different. and that's why there's so many different names. I think that's why it gets confusing sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
But there's definitely a lot of legends, and Scotland's beautiful, by the way. Such a cool place. I went to Edinburgh 2 years ago now. One of the best places I've ever been to. Amazing. It's like Harry Potter world. You're literally walking around Harry Potter world, Hogwarts. You know, it's like every building just looks like that, Harry Potter. And yeah, but there's so many legends, and I think there's something to these legends, obviously, and I think that's why we still have these experiences today. You know, with cryptids, and there's a lot of cryptid sightings in Scotland to this day, especially Bigfoot sightings. I've heard many accounts in the UK of Bigfoot sightings, and a lot of them come from Scotland, which is quite interesting. You know, are there certain areas for some reason? You know, I don't know why, but it's interesting, man. I don't think that really answers your question, but
Well, it does to a point. So here's what we need to dive into also that we haven't mentioned yet. Let's talk about the phenomena of like aerial phenomena, okay? Because a lot of people are familiar with the stories of the flying things, dragons, that sort of thing. But there's other aerial phenomena that happens over there as well. So let's talk about that for a moment.
I've seen some weird things in the sky that I can't explain. The first thing that I saw I'm fascinated with UFOs and stuff, so I'm always looking up. I'm always trying to see something, you know, and you do see lights in the sky that you can't explain sometimes, you know. Most people see that. You talk to most people, even people that are not interested in this stuff, and they'll tell you they've seen a strange light in the sky that they can't explain. But my first sort of big experience with that was when I was 14 years old. We was playing football in the street, or soccer in the street, and it was me and my brother and a few other friends, and we used to do this pretty much every day, just play soccer in the street. And it was during the summer, and it was a beautiful day, blue sky, and we're playing, and one of our friends said, "What is that?" And we've all stopped to look, and there was this thing in the sky that to this day I've never really seen again. You know, not how we saw it, but the best way to describe it is if you took a building from Dubai, you know, like the modern, funky looking buildings, picked it up, put it in the sky really high up, and just let it float. That is basically what we saw. And I know that sounds wild, but we were watching this, and as I say, I was very young. I was 14 years old, and my UFO knowledge wasn't great. You know, I'm not saying it's perfect now, but I know a lot more now. I know a lot more. But then I was fascinated by it, and we're all looking at this thing in the sky, trying to work out what it was. You know, is it a plane? Is it a blimp? You know, we're going through all what it could be. No idea what this thing was. It was like an orangey silver color. You know, I can't say that we saw it was too high up. You couldn't see really if there was like windows on it or anything, but it looked like there could be patterns to it. You know, it's very hard to describe. But we're watching this thing for like 5-10 minutes, and it bugs me to this day. But we all just started playing football again. You know, I don't know why, because you know I wanted to. You know, it bugs me. And the weird thing is as well is me and my brother never really spoke about that. Of all the weird things that we've experienced, like that never, and it was quite a big thing, you know, to see something like that in the sky. Never talked about it after that, really. Like I can't remember ever talking about it, because when I started Let's Get Freaky podcast, I wrote down all the weird stuff that I'd experienced. So you know, when I'm talking about this stuff, I can recall it and stuff. Never even put that out. I never wrote that down. I never even remembered that memory, you know, even though it was such an incredible thing. And I was on a podcast. First time I'd ever been a guest on a podcast. I was on Paranormal Heart with Cat Wald, and we're talking about UFO stuff. And I've had other experiences, so we're talking about that. And this memory came back. I was like, I'm going to share it, you know. And I told her what I saw that day, and I was like, wow, how have I not remembered that? That's incredible, you know. Am I going mad? You know, am I manifesting this memory? But my brother listened to that episode, And he called me like a couple of days later after the show came out, and he went, "Bruv, what was that thing we saw that day? And why have we never talked about it?" And I was like, "I'm so glad you remembered that, because I thought I was going crazy. Why have we never talked about this before? How have we not discussed this?" And to this day, we don't know what it was. You know, I've seen similar pictures that look similar to it, but never exactly what we saw that day. Very strange, man, you know, because nothing like that should just float still, motionless in the sky. And it was kind of glistening as well. It was shining. So very strange, man. Very strange. So that was the first thing I saw that I say put in the UFO category.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty intense. So you touched on, and Tom also brought up your podcast. Justin, let's talk about that for a moment as we're starting to wind it up for the night here, because I know over there you guys are like, you will eventually want to go to bed soon.
That's cool, man. I live on American time. So right now the time is 2:20 in the morning, but
It's too early.
it's very normal for me. Yeah, I go to bed about 4 or 5 o'clock normally, and even then I have to make myself go to bed. I live on like Eastern Standard Time. It's basically my time.
Oh dear.
Yeah, I'm a bit
interesting. Yeah, I say that, but I work overnight, so usually I'm awake all night long. So let's talk about the podcast. First of all, where did this title come from? I love the title.
I know. Let's get freaky. I knew obviously I wanted to do a podcast. I was thinking about it for a long time. Never really had a name. I don't know where it just came one day. I was like, let's get freaky. I was like, yeah, that'll work. And obviously let's get freaky. Sometimes people think that's something else. You know, it can be another topic, you know. But it's, you know, it's clean. Well, I say clean, but it's none of that. But but yeah, let's get freaky. It just felt right, and that was it. And yeah,
it kind of goes, because you have a reputation that precedes you over here, and it's a very good reputation. We love some Tommy, and that's one of the things we have all come to appreciate: your sense of humor and your good nature about going with things. So
thank you, man.
It's your podcast, and Tom and I discussed this a little bit tonight, actually. Tom, do you eat hot dogs?
Yes, I do.
See, there you go, guys.
I eat hot dogs.
Oh my goodness. So the title match, yeah, I agree, Pam, it does. So when you put your show together, when you really started to evolve into where you are now, what was your mission? What was your main goal?
It's a tough one, because I don't really know. But I just knew I wanted to do a podcast, and I knew I wanted to talk about paranormal, because that's a subject that just fascinates me. You know, I can sit and listen to people tell me their experiences all day. Like, I love it. I don't get sick of it. I love hearing people's experiences. And so podcast for me was quite a big thing. So I used to listen to podcasts quite a lot before I started Let's Get Freaky. And I really enjoy listening to podcasts to this day. I love it. I love sort of escaping, you know, because when you listen to a podcast, I feel like you're kind of in that conversation. You're in the room with those guys or girls, whoever's talking. You're there. It really feels like that. There's something special to me about a podcast, and podcasts got me through a lot of like bad days. You know, like in a job where I wasn't too happy, I'd put a podcast in, and it would lift me, and I'd be like, "Oh, this is so good. It's like made my day, this podcast." So I was kind of thinking I'd like to do that for other people. I'd love to be a place where people can just tune out, relax, and know that I'm going to be there at a certain time every week. Because there was podcasts that I used to rely on at a certain time every week. I'd really look forward to it. It was like it became a part of my routine. So I was like, I'd like to be that for someone else, and have a routine And again, I love meeting people like yourself, meet so many amazing people. And yeah, that's what it was, man. And I didn't know what I was doing when I started Let's Get Freaky. And I still don't really know, to be honest. I still don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm enjoying it, man. I love meeting people like you, and it's such a cool thing.
Well, I think the general consensus over here is we love you. That is
Oh, thank you, man. I love you all. I want to
is
move to America. That's the goal. I want to. I want
ah,
to. I want to live in America one day.
it's so funny. We all, well, not we all, but there are those of us who want to escape, and so many others that want to come. Um, I would love to go to live in Scotland for a period of time.
Hmm.
Uh,
Scotland's beautiful, man. It really is.
yeah,
It's a special place. It's like a magical place. It really is.
it really is. It very much is, and that's one of the things that that's kind of my goal. But you know what? You would have so many people over here that would absolutely adore you being
Ah,
here. So,
thank you,
um,
man.
well, because here's the thing: it's like you have succeeded in accomplishing what you set out to do. You make people's day. You give people information that they want, but you also make their day. You make it brighter. You make it more
Oh,
fun.
thank you, man.
And I think that is the beauty of Let's Get Freaky. Um, I gotta tell you, like when the first time we talked, I was like, I really wasn't that familiar at first, and I didn't realize I had this whole group of people around me that was in the know and was keeping you their best kept secret. And I'm like, who is this guy? And the more I talked to you, the more I realized I don't know, but I gotta know. And accumulating into now is like hell with my best friend. I love it. Um, you know, your show is a combination of thought candy and therapy all in one.
Oh, thank you, man.
So we really appreciate you. Let me ask you this. What closing thoughts would you like to leave with us tonight?
Or closing thoughts.
Mhm.
I'm thank you so much for having me on, man, for a start. I mean, I've really enjoyed coming on and talking to you. Closing thoughts. I think it's important to share your experiences. We all have, a lot of us have these experiences, these paranormal experiences, and sometimes you can feel a bit stupid telling people, especially people that are not into this kind of thing. Like the amount of times I've shared an experience with someone and you get that look like, really? Even though they've probably had an experience themselves at some point, you still get that look. So I think it's important to share your experiences. The more we share, the more we learn. I think the best way of us ever getting the answers to these subjects is just by talking and learning more. And I think that's an important thing to do. So share your experiences, and it's a friendly community. This community that we're in, and a great community. And yeah, it's join.
It
Come and
really
say,
is.
come and say
Definitely.
hi. Come and say hi.
100%. Hey, so give us really quickly, give us a little bit of an idea of what you've got coming up on the show.
Oh, next up on the show, what have I got? Then the next episode, which will be out next Monday, and it's I could tell you what the show's called. It's called I say that and then I forget. It's not non-human intelligence mind control. So it's an
Oh,
interesting one. It's an interesting one.
that's
And that
gonna be deep.
that'll be out Monday. Yeah, it gets deep. So
Wow.
that's Monday's episode.
Awesome. Awesome. All right, guys. We've got something to look forward to on Monday. Um, again, thank you very much for coming on
No,
tonight,
thank you,
Tommy.
man.
It's
Anytime, man. Thank you.
you were definitely one of my favorite people. So,
Oh,
and I appreciate you. I'm gonna pull us back and close off, and I will talk with you in just a moment.
Thank you, brother.
All right, guys, there you have it. It was an amazing chat tonight. You guys were an awesome group. I thank you for joining us. And just again, thank you for your ongoing support. Don't forget, if you watched this far, give me a comment, give me a like. And guys, just a heads up, I have more people watching my show who are non-subscribers than people who subscribe. So hit that button. Give me your devotion, if you will. And remember, may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past lives.